Welcome back again, GDC fans. It is Uncle Kaka here again with part 2 of the Riku video series. Again, if you like these videos, let us know where I can start looking at improving the rig here from the haphazard shenanigans of rulers holding up webcams stuck through CD racks that's going on right now. Anyway, part 1 we had the mulligan of the deck, so the other thing I was asked here is if I can give you guys a visual playthrough of the deck. So let's give it a whirl. I'll get our vaunted commander out the way. And again, I'm going to apologise for the small surface area we're working with. This is a webcam, so it is not fantastically amazeballs. Let us see what opening hand is. Now I've pre-shuffled this deck, so let's see. Well, okay, we have a counterspell, an urban evolution, a Sylvan Library, Volcanic Island, Soul Ring, an island, and a Hinterland Harbour. Okay, that's a pretty gassy good hand. Well, let's see what we've actually got here. We've got, in terms of mana, we've got a little bit of everything. We do have a lot of blue here, which is something we really want to see, and we do have all our colours, so pretty happy with that. We have some obvious sequencing to choose from. In terms of the rest of our cards, we have Sylvan Library, so we have gas. We have Urban Evolution, we have gas. We have Counterspell, we have protection. So this is an amazing first hand. I mean, there are definitely better first hands, but you don't get much better. This is pretty standard in terms of you get a bit of gas, you get some land. This is sort of the average sort of hand I'd really expect in terms of the ability to do things. So definitely a keeper. Let's go from here. Now, in terms of mana choices, obviously there's no real first turn spell play apart from Soul Ring. We want to get that Hinterland Harbour into play untapped as quickly as possible. So our real obvious choices are Volcanic or Island. As I've said before, when looking at the land options, we really want to go for maximum colours with blue, so we're going to go for Volcanic. That'll lead us into the Soul Ring. Obviously I really should look at my draws. We have a Reverberate, does very little, but that's okay. Turn 2, let's see what we've got. We've got a forest, so we've got plenty of mana available here. We're not too choked out. Obviously our choice here is the Hinterland Harbour, the forest, or the island. We really want to get the more blue on the board to get that counterspell live, and as I said, we wanted to get green available for Urban Evolution and Sylvan Library, so we're going to go to the harbour. It gets us where we want to go. We're going to arm up and we're going to launch into that Sylvan Library though, because we want to start getting draws really enabled on that board. That's going to get us far in advance of where our opponents are in the early game, and give us the ability to dig our way out of messes in the late game there as well. So Sylvan Library, super valuable. We want to have that in play as soon as possible. Turn 3. So, let's see what we have here. Now, Sylvan Library is going to let us see 3 cards. We see a Commandeer, we see a Winds of Change, and we have a Tropical Island. Now, in terms of this, we've got plenty of gas right now. We've got plenty of land, we've got spells we can cast. We're pretty happy with what we're seeing. One of the options here is with the Urban Evolution, if we can get to 5 mana, we potentially want to actually start trying to reverberate that. Now, the problem with that is we do need to see a second red, which we aren't seeing at the moment. We do have 4 mana available. We are only playing a land this turn, which means we could get an Urban Evolution, which means we could get further ahead. But from there, I mean, our options become a little more limited in terms of the Winds of Change. But that could be a really valuable option next turn, because we are drawing 3 cards this turn. So if we do keep potentially 2 of these, or 3 of these, or even just 1 of these, using Urban Evolution, we're going to play 2 lands. We'll be casting an Evolution, which will leave us with 2 cards. If we hold on to these 3, that takes us to 5, plus 3 more, that takes us to 8. Which means we will be pitching 1, so probably the most logical thing for us to do here would be to keep only 2 of these, which will fill us up and allow us to go for a big Winds of Change next turn for 7, and fully load out. So I think that's probably a really good option right now. Under this sort of scenario, what I would probably do, I would be looking to... Well, it doesn't really matter which one we keep here, but we want to keep the Tropical Island because it is a better option. So we'll just put the Winds of Change back down, take 4 pain, it's not too bad. Now, from here we will play the Tropical Island, as I mentioned it before, because at the end of the day, blue, duals, always going to be our preferred option. We are going to then launch into a Urban Evolution, as mentioned before. Again, we had the option of the Reverberate. In this case, it's not going to happen anytime soon. We do want that extra draw. We do want those extra lands. So let's go for the Urban Evolution at this particular point here. Now that's going to draw us, as I said before, Winds of Change. It's going to get us a Windfall, and it's going to get us a Mark Drain. Wow, we are really, really hungry for options here. So let us play some cards here. We have an island in play. We have 7 cards in hand. We are going to potentially see some more cards from the Sylvan Library next turn. We don't need to take all the pain now though, but obviously we're low on counter magic. If we do need to counter something, we do have a Commandeer. We can steal a spell. We can pitch potentially Windfall and Drain, or Windfall counter spell to it. We've got options. It's not bad at all. Pretty happy with where we're sitting right now. We can essentially roll through and let the game happen. We can use the Sylvan Library to potentially refill and let the Windfall, the Winds of Change, do that job there for us next turn. Alrighty, so we'll go to the next turn there. Now, bear in mind we are now a little bit ahead of our opponents in terms of card draws and lands in play. Sylvan Library will show us Tarn, it'll show us Mountain, it will show us Cascade Bluffs. We've got a lot of land potentially available here. Again, so we basically want to see 7. We've got 7 cards in hand. We could take 8 points of pain here, play a land, and still dig deep with the Windfall, or we can dig deep with the Winds of Change. The difference between the two is that Winds of Change is going to shuffle the hand back into the library, so you could re-see some of these cards, whereas Windfall is going to discard them. I really want the counter spells to be back in the deck, so if we're going to do something, Winds of Change, A is a cheaper spell, B is also going to get us more length in terms of being able to put our cardboard into play. So from here, since we only have 1 basic in play, we've got plenty of basics here. We probably want to get these basics back in the deck. We're not too worried about that. We would probably want to be more willing to take some pain. We're going to keep all 3 here. So we're going to take a little extra pain. Means we're down essentially to 28 life. It's a risk, but it's a risk that at this point of the game, at the advantage we have, is worth taking. Now, land-wise, we are going to drop a Cascade Bluffs because we can filter whatever we like. We can now essentially get access to triple red if we really need to. This leaves us with essentially 9 cards available. We'll use the Volcanic for the blue to drop a Winds of Change. Now, for most of our opponents, they're going to be down to 5 or 6, maybe even 4 cards in hand. Possibly even less. We're on 8, so we're going to essentially shuffle 8 in and draw 8. At this point, it is potentially worth having your opponents start counting the number of draws, or even just counting the number of draws that they make as well. Sometimes you could potentially even take someone out at this point of the game, but it is risky if you decide you need to Cerebral Vortex yourself, that you could potentially take a big hole, and you don't want to do that right now, because you've taken enough damage yourself from your own Sylvan Library. Library at this point is probably going to be more of a filter effect rather than big draw power, but it's done its job. It's got you ahead, which is what you want this thing to do. So let's shuffle up nice and good and flip our 8 cards out. Alrighty. We have Beast Within, we have a Forbid, we have a Gruul Turf, a Wheel of Fortune, a Mountain, we have a Flooded Grove, and we have a Ristic Study. And we have one more card. We have a Blue Foothills. So this is not a great rip here, and unfortunately this does happen. That is the nature of the randomness of a wheel effect, that who knows what you're going to get. We have several options at this point. We can go for another wheel. We have the Wheel of Fortune. We could try to set up a Ristic Study and hold up counter mana off Forbid and go for the wheel next turn when our mana opens up again. We definitely have several options. The advantage to wheeling now is that we can potentially do it with 3 or 4 mana left up. The disadvantage is obviously that we are wheeling again and we are reducing the amount we have available because we can't drop any more lands this turn. Otherwise, we do have the option to go for the Ristic Study. We can obviously hold up plenty of counter mana to get this done, but we only have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mana. Now, in terms of doing that, we do need blue and 2, which the Hinterland Harbour will give us, and Sol Ring, so we can get Ristic Study and we can hold up for Forbid, but we are facing people who have essentially cycled their hands. Probably going to try to do something. In this case, the Ristic Study is the safer play. The Wheel of Fortune is definitely the more aggressive and desperate play, but given we have that Forbid, we have the ability to drop some lands next turn, and we're probably going to get a card draw out of the Ristic Study because it is early. The Ristic Study is probably the most safe and best value play. So let's drop that with the intent to hold Forbid as our potential counter. So this is where we're going to assume that we do have to use Forbid this turn. We don't really need to worry too much about buying it back, but we can, because we do have plenty of lands here we can pitch. So if you do want to buy this back and potentially hold that threat up, feel free to do so. It's not so much of an issue. You will get those lands back. So we will do that. We will cast Forbid. We will buy it back by pitching 2 land, the Wooded Foothills and the Basic Mountain. Neither are particularly relevant at this point, but we are still showing we do have counter magic, and people need to play cautiously. Now, this will also assume we do get a draw off the Ristic Study. Okay, great, we have a mana drain. That's pretty fantastic. But not everyone's going to give you that draw. Most people are going to try to avoid it. We all know this. This is pretty stock standard stuff. So let's go to our next turn. Adjust that table. Sorry, boys and girls. Now, we'll go for the Sylvan Library. We'll see what we get again. Now, again, at this point, as I said before, we really don't want to be buying into 3 different cards unless we absolutely need to win the game. What we've got is we do have 2 lands and a Sylvan Scrying, so it's a land tutor. None of these are a great option. We don't really want any of these. So under this sort of scenario where we know we are going to wheel, what we're likely to do here is we're likely to really want to take the Sylvan Scrying and put the other 2 back on top. With this, we're going to want to essentially maximize what our mana availability is going to be. Problem here is that all our land are blue. We do have a Gruul Turf, which can get us up to high degrees of mana, but we also have access to a Flooded Grove, which can filter us into more blue as well, which is super valuable. It also filters onto green, which again is super valuable. The question is, what is going to be more valuable for us? The ability to get to double mana, or the ability to filter into colours. Sometimes it's a bit of a tricky one. In this sort of case here, where we are potentially wanting to hold up counter magic and go for some deeper shots, because we have that double counter now, we may actually want to hold this another turn, which is what makes it a little more difficult than we otherwise would be needing to consider. Do we go for the extra step of the mana, or do we go for dropping the Flooded Grove, knowing that we do have mana coming next turn? That's where things get a little tricky. There's no real answer on this one. It's more a case of what your board's doing. Under this sort of scenario, we've got plenty of draw power available to us. We've got plenty of counter magic, and we do have a wheel up and coming. I would usually prefer to just sit back here unless the board is particularly aggressive. Aggressive in the sense of that you need to dig for a solution. This sort of hand, you can sit back and you can wait. So we're going to sit back and wait for a turn or two. It's no big deal here. The Gruul Turf isn't going to be any real value to us at this particular stage, so we'll play the Flooded Grove and we'll hold up the Forbid and the Mana Drain. We only need essentially 5 mana value before that, but we do want to cast that Mana Drain first for when we lead into that wheel, because it's going to be the biggest value there for us. Going forward for this one here, as we've got essentially 5 mana available there to us, we can at this point use the mana there to cast that Sylvan Scrying, and that's going to get those extra lands off the top of that deck. We're going to filter those 2 lands we saw before, the Steam Vents and the Mountain, off the top. We are going to find a command tower, which is going to get us that extra reach and colour balance if we ever need it. Now, during the next attempted turns, we will obviously assume that threats are going to come down. People have stabilised themselves to the point where they're going to try something, which is going to essentially run us out of our counters, which is pretty much an expected thing. We knew it was going to happen. We were banking on it. We were hoping for it. Because they're paying for those extra mana into the Ristic Study to stop us reloading, it's going to make it more difficult for them to essentially hold the mana up to counter our counters. And if they do, you can probably double counter their biggest threat. You just want to make sure that you don't have big threats coming at you. So we're going to assume here that the Mana Drain and the Forbid get used, and we've got probably a 4 mana spell under the drain. We're going to hit something fairly decent. These 2 cards are going to cover us for what we need to stop. We don't need to worry about buying back the Forbid at this particular point. You can if you want. Under this sort of scenario where we do have a land to play next turn, we do have the Wheel of Fortune. Buying back the Forbid, probably a very good idea. We'll pitch the Beast Within and the Gruul Turf. The Gruul Turf has just been valuable for that particular reason, to buy that Forbid back. So, we'll take that. We'll go to our turn. We're probably not taking too much damage at this particular point. You've got the board fairly well under control. You probably haven't drawn from the Ristic Study, and that's okay. It's just forcing people to play more defensively against you and slow their own board state progression down. Now, with this one, we will see 3 cards, and these 3 cards are pretty good. We aren't seeing lands, so we know we can play our command tower. I should just show that a little more to the camera. We have a Brutal Expulsion, we have a Cryptic Command, and we have a Garruk Wildspeaker. So these are great options. In terms of these cards, they're nothing that's really going to be wanting to make us stop playing for the wheel. The wheel definitely is a big digger here for us. And we do have the Forbid that's going to make us want to go deep into it. In terms of this particular case, if we go for the Garruk, it is going to it's going to take 4 to cast, which will then we do have Forbid mana and Wheel of Fortune mana up, and we'll essentially dig 1 card out of the ones we know we're going to get, because we will get the Brutal Expulsion, we'll get the Cryptic then. So we know we have counter mana up, which is quite nice. So let's take the Garruk. Seems like a great choice there. We'll pop the other 2 on top. At this particular point, we will play the command tower. So we are filling up our land quite nicely. We do have a good balance. We're quite happy with the flavours we've got available. They're not an issue at all. We'll tap any 4, because we've essentially got blue on tap wherever we like it. Blue is all great, so we'll play our Garruk, and we will get our 2 filter lands untapped again. We're quite happy to run with those. The command tower does lead into the Soul Ring, which allows us to go for the wheel. Now, they know we have the Forbid on tap, so they're unlikely to try to counter that. If they do, you do have the counter magic available. You can solve that, but you've probably run them out of counters with the number of counters you played over the last couple of turns. So unlikely they're going to be able to counter it, but the Wheel of Fortune will do a very good job here for us. that obviously will pitch out for bid, and we'll draw our new 7 cards. We see the Expulsion, the Cryptic, the Helm, Jace's Sanctum, Mindbreak Trap, Turnabout, and Twin Cast. We are at this point laughing. This is the sort of shenanigans we really want to see here. The only problem, obviously, with these particular spells is we don't have a big draw effect, which does make the whole situation a little bit slightly more awkward. The command tower potentially is going to see us some draws, so the Cryptic command is going to see us a draw. The rest of it, however, isn't going to see us a huge amount of load work in terms of where we can extend ourselves. Now, the big question we do want to ask is, do we go for something now? Do we hold off? Where do we actually want to stand with the spells here? We do have Cryptic Command mana up, which is nice. We can essentially sit behind that. We can go for the counter. We can go for the draw. We can go for the tap down. We could try to cheapen our spells, but obviously at this particular point it is a bit risky. Because we don't have any real creature board presence, the tap and draw and the tap and counter are probably our favourite options. So this sort of scenario, given that we are not trying to untap all our lands, because we don't have the full reach on our turnabout to do that. The turnabout could potentially get us re-access to 7 mana, which could potentially get us the Helm of Awakening down, could get us the Jace's Sanctum down, and get us some reach there. But we really want to try to get the turnabout with a Twin Cast. We're going to sit back on the set and the 4 mana and just let them do a few things to try to accelerate the board. We'll use that Cryptic as a defense and essentially hold us in a position where we can go for things we need to. If we absolutely need to do things, we can Mindbreak Trap as well. We definitely have access to 4 mana, and that's where we really want to be right now. 4 mana is the bee's knees. So we will go to our next turn, assuming Ritualistic Study doesn't happen. We'll assume that we did have to Cryptic at some point, so which will get us a card draw, which is pretty nice. We have mana available. We shall untap us up quite nicely. Let's get ourselves all reloaded and see what the Sylvan Library has for us today. Okay, so we have plenty of toys here yet again. We are seeing Windfalls, we're seeing Cultivates. We've got options to dig and to get that value in here. Under this sort of scenario, we really want to see just the Windfalls. So we're going to pop the other 2 back. The Windfalls are going to be where we want to go. We're going to play on Island. Now, from here, we do need to get things more cost effective. So we're going to play that Soul Ring. We're going to use that Soul Ring to play that Helm of Awakening. And that's going to make all our spells just that smidge cheaper, get us a little bit of extra reach here. Given most of our opponents are going to have essentially refilled their hands and not be able to do a huge amount, we're probably going to be expecting a Windfall to do a good 5 or so cards of depth there, which is pretty nice. It's what we actually want to get into seeing. Going a little deeper here, we do want to try to get some real reach on some of our spells. So we're going to tap 3 down, because our Helm of Awakening makes our Jace's Sanctum a little bit cheaper, which means we have 5 mana available, but it means we can cast our Windfall for blue. We can cast our Turnabout for blue 1. We can cast our Twin Cast for blue, which is fantastic. At this point, we have 5 blue mana available, so we're actually going to tap the whole lot here, and we're going to use Turnabout, lands, Twin Cast lands. This is essentially so we can flood our own mana and we can get ourselves deep. The advantage to this, though, is it also gives us the ability to scry twice and filter off those 2 cards we saw with the Sylvan Library before that we didn't like. So first one is that Search for Tomorrow. Great card, but unfortunately we don't want to see that right now. We don't want lands, we just want gas. So we're going to stick that one to the bottom. our twin cast resolves, copying the turnabout, which is going to untap us all these lands. We've got plenty of land here. Functionality wise, we essentially have 8 blue mana, which is huge. We're going to tap that 8 blue mana. We're going to see the second scry. And that's going to see that cultivate we saw earlier. We really don't want that cultivate again. We have 8 blue mana. We're about to get another access to 8 mana. We have 16 mana available. We do not need a cultivate right now. Let's get rid of that. So we are going to resolve the turnabout, untapping our lands again. Again, remember, we have 8 blue in pool. This is huge for this deck. We love having mana in pool. We love having our lands untapped because it means we can keep casting spells. We can keep doing things. Doing things is what we want to do. We're here to do things. We have the ability to defend ourselves and we can do it well. So, at this particular point, using one of those blue mana, we have a windfall. We can extrapolate that our opponents have 4 or 5 things in hand. It's not a huge issue. We can use 1 red mana, 1 of the blues. We can put something else in their hand. We can stick a creature or a planeswalker in it. As long as we can get some extra cards in their hand, it's great. So we're going to assume there's probably 5 cards in someone's hand with a brutal expulsion. The other advantage to that is we do get another scry, so we can see if we've got some rubbish. It's land, it's rubbish. Let's get rid of that. Use one of those blues, we'll windfall. Now this is going to leave us, if you're keeping track at home, with 6 blue in pool. And we have essentially cast about 2, 3, 4. This will be our 6th spell this turn. We've cast a lot of spells. This is highly relevant stuff. So you always keep track of your storm count. You want to cast that windfall, get those 5 cards. Assuming someone tries to counter it, you've got the Mind Break Trap. It's not an issue. That takes you to 7 spells, 8 spells, and you're going to get 5 cards back. So let's draw this one up. 1, 2, 3. Sorry. Just factor in. I should have actually scryed a couple of times here. So these 2 cards would have been scryed off because they're not great. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now this is what we're talking about here. This is why that scry is so valuable. Because when you defend your wheels with the scry, or your windfalls, or your winds of change, when you're defending yourself with that scry, you're digging those cards out of the way that you don't want to see. But it's also making your spells cheaper. Now, remembering we still have a good 2 blue in pool, and we're on essentially Storm 8 now. Anything we do is going to be absolutely fantastic. We've still got 7 mana available to tap, 2 blue in pool. We could go for any kind of gold we really, really liked. There is not much that can be done to essentially stop us. We have Blatant Thievery. We can go steal something from everyone. We have Mystical Tutor. We can go and fish up pretty much any spell we like. We have a Fact of Fiction. We can go and essentially get a refill of our hand if we want to for functionally free. We have a Time Reversal. We can wheel again. We can fill ourselves back up to 7. This is what I was talking about when I was talking that the deck wants to go to the next wheel, that every wheel you take is going to be another step to the next evolution. We've just seen a windfall get us to another wheel, or get us to potentially another wheel here, or get us to a fact. Everything that this deck does will get you to the next step to attack, and that's what you want it to do. So from here, we can have to recalculate this one. We know our spells are at -2, so this Time Reversal is essentially 3. It's essentially the same cost as a Time Twister right now. Fact of Fiction is 2 mana. Mystical is still 1. Blatant Thievery is 5. The island, pretty dead. We've got to look at how deep we need to go. Do we need to try to draw some cards? Do we need to dig? What do we actually want to do here? Given we have 9 mana available, we have a lot of choice. If we wanted to go really deep on the Mystical Tutor, we can certainly do that. what I would be mostly looking for, though, I'll be mostly looking to see what the fact of fiction is going to get us here, because we don't need to worry about the mystical tutor right now. That fact of fiction could get us something absolutely tasty. It may not as well. However, the mystical tutor combined with the fact of fiction, that opponent can choose to separate cards into two piles, and they'll know if you mystical tutor which pile to give you, which one not to. But you could also go the other way around. Do you want to get a specific card, because you will get it off fact of fiction from the draw? Or do you want to go for the time reversal and just dig for 7? You certainly can do that. You can also time reversal in the fact that it gives you plenty of options. In this case, we're going to go for fact and time reversal. So that all uses the blue in our pool there at the moment. We do get the Scry, of course, which is a Sky Shroud claim. Don't particularly need it, so we're going to pop it down to the bottom. We will see the 5 cards we do get now. Bear in mind, our storm count is now 9. And we dig up 5 cards here. So we have a Bribery, we have a Mind's Desire, we have Rootbound Crag, Rewind, and Rite of Replication. All these cards are particularly good. Rite of Replication, we all know what it does. Clone something X number of times. We can steal things out of our opponent's decks. Or the Mind's Desire. Mind's Desire, that can do all sorts of things. You just don't know what it's going to give you here. Under this sort of scenario, the question is what your opponent's going to split. I've got to assume we have a couple of canny opponents. I've got to assume that they really are going to want to try to make sure that that Rite of Replication doesn't have counter magic backup. So what I'm expecting they'll probably split here is they'll very probably split the Mind's Desire with the Rewind and the land, and the Rite of Replication and the Bribery. That's how I would expect they'd probably split this if they're particularly canny. I'm obviously going to take the Mind's Desire pile because we have a decent storm count, and the Rite of Replication and the Bribery are not crash hot right now, even though you'd normally think they're great. So, with this scenario in mind, what I am going to do right now is I am going to actually cast that Mind's Desire. Now, this one is obviously you can cast for blue, and 2, which means I will drop it off these 4 here. Still holding up counter mana with the Rewind. Not going to bother scrying because the Mind's Desire is going to essentially just shuffle the deck anyway. So Mind's Desire will give me 10 storm worth of effect. So just to speed the process up here, this is where this deck gets particularly fun. You can still definitely whiff off this deck. There is no guarantee this deck is going to do anything great off of Mind's Desire or Epic Experiment, but if you can get your storm up to this sort of level, you're pretty much guaranteed you're in the sort of territory where the world is going to hurt your opponents. So let's start flipping some cardboard. We have a Forest. We have a Reverberate. We have an Evacuation. This particular point, I mean, we still have 7 copies of Mind's Desire in the stack. We don't have to keep resolving them. We can do other things with the spells in question. This sort of scenario, I'm going to leave that Reverberate for now. We have a Taiga. Oh, we have 2 spells here. I apparently can't pick things up properly. We have Taiga. We have an Acquire, so it's 5 down. We have a Rainforest. We have a Wild Ricochet. We have a Mountain. We have a Rift Sweeper. Now, we're at 9. We still have Mind's Desire in the stack here. And we have potentially got 2 Forks. Under these sort of scenarios, we've got a couple of good options. We can potentially fork Mind's Desire again to go a little deeper. Who knows what that extra spell is going to be. So I'd actually normally at this particular point take the Reverberate, and I'm going to actually fork my original Mind's Desire, which will take us to Storm 11, and we get a counterspell. Now, tricky part to this one here is that we can actually do some shenanigans on the stack to free up some mana, which we certainly want to do. So we're going to put a counter spell targeting our last Miner's Desire, and then we're going to use 2 of our land to rewind that counter spell to free up some very, very valuable mana. This is the nature of those free spells. You can just get extra reach by doing sneaky little things with your rewinds. And we still have a Miner's Desire on the stack here. Not a huge amount of things we can do with it. We are going to go for the Wild Ricochet onto that Miner's Desire though, so it'll take us up to Storm 14, which means we do have 2 more Miner's Desires to play. So we'll flip, there we go, we have a Steam Augury. With that Steam Augury, still have a Miner's Desire on the stack. We might as well go for it, just to see how deep we potentially could get here. Or we can go for let's actually go with the Miner's Desire. Seems like a good idea. So this is the last Miner's Desire. We have a Stormseeker. That's pretty beastly. That's pretty beastly indeed. Alright, so with the Miner's Desire, we've got to obviously realise we can't put those lands into play, so let's just shuffle those off to exile. We have plenty of options here right now, so we can obviously fetch things back with Wrist Sweeper if we need to this turn. We can smack some of the face with Stormseeker if we fill their hand up. We can steal things out of decks, we can evacuate, so you can go full on Steam Augury. Acquire, this could find us a Blightsteel, it could find us a good Lotus, worst possibly a Sol Ring, but Acquire is always a good thing to get us extra mana. So we're going to assume that's going to find us a Sol Ring. Storm 15. We'll go for the Steam Augury at this particular point to see what sort of value we can dig out of that. Now I'll put these cards off to the side. Steam Augury is the reverse, of course, of Fact or Fiction. Storm will be 16. Rude Awakening. Mountain. Ulamog. Forest. And Skyshroud Claim. Now, in terms of this one here, as we can see, we have cards, we have things we want to potentially do here. The logical split, there is only one logical split, is to split it in the one way that they will give me the most logical pile. Either they give me the biggest pile or they'll give me the best pile. In this case, the best pile is Rude Awakening. If they're actually particularly canny, they'll realise I don't have enough mana to actually dump that, that forest is also exiled, the Ulamog out, but they won't know I don't necessarily have a way to go and make that happen, so they'll probably try to give me, if they're canny, the Ulamog pile, and the Rude Awakening will go to the bin, which is a little bit sad, but unfortunately it is what it is. Now, I'd certainly do that anyway, because knowing how much of a canny little snipe I am, not giving me access to more mana is always a really, really intelligent play. So we have 5 spells available on hand. We have 3 available of our Miner's Desire. Storm is currently 15. It's always something good to remind yourself where you are with your mana, where you are with your storm count, just so you know how deep you can go with this particular deck. Because there are so many moving parts. If you don't keep track of those moving parts, you're going to end up in trouble. Now, from here, we have essentially access to 6 mana. Factor in the Helm is -1. 7 mana if we factor in the Jason's Sanctums. We can Blatant Thievery, we can Time Reversal. There is literally, the world is our oyster right now. There is not much that can be done to essentially stop us. I'm going to go for the Skyshroud Claim at this point, because essentially, functionally, it is a free spell. That will find us 2 forests. We'll do that off the Tropical Island and the Island. So let's go fish up some basic land, put them into play, hoping that I haven't actually forgotten that I've pulled out all the forests already. Just double checking. No, we definitely have forests in the deck. That's good. We can risk a bit of pain. We'll find a forest island, and we will find just a plain forest at this particular point. There we go. So we're probably in our low 20s at this particular point. 5 mana still open on the board. Storm is 16. Plenty of reach left to go. Unlikely to go and find us anything too good at this particular point. We can certainly reshuffle our graveyard in. And as we can see, the graveyard right now has lots of gas, lots of things we can do. The ability to really get there and draw another card out of the library that's going to reload our graveyard right now, not a huge chance of it. We really need to be lucky. Next turn though, with Mystical Tutor, we certainly can dig deep and find some good solutions. What we can do now though is we can certainly throw threats on the board. So the most logical way to attack the whole situation right now is going to be to recycle our opponent's abilities to do anything at all. So let's hit the evacuation, which is going to shuffle put our opponent's creatures back up. Resets the board very, very nicely. If anyone has a big hand, Storm Seeker to the face. Always good. It's going to hurt. Basically, Trebek can suck it if this was Jeopardy, in the words of Sean Connery. That's going to put a big hole in someone's face quite happily. The Rift Sweeper won't do a huge amount right now. We don't need to worry about that too badly, but what we do want to do is we do want to get that time reversal going. So we are going to tap up our 3 mana for it. We are going to take the time reversal, which will exile, and then we'll shuffle this pile of rubbish up. We'll grab our graveyard again, and we'll reload our deck and hopefully see us into a play for next turn. So we see a Cinderglade, a Rewind, Alchemist Refuge, Darksteel Ingot, Brutal Expulsion, Cyclonic Rift, and of course, Yulamog. Okay, it's going to happen. You're going to see cards back. You shuffle this up enough times, it's going to happen. We have access to Rewind, of course, to reload our ability to sling some cardboard. We also have access to Mass Bounce and more mana. We're pretty happy with where we are right now. I'm not too worried by this. We are going to use my desire to cast the Rift Sweeper, which means we have the only creature on the board, and that will allow us to reshuffle in the time reversal from exile to deck. It is a beautiful little trick there. You can get your time reversals back, you can get your time spirals back. If you have a Riku out, you can get multiple of them back. So there is nothing this deck can't reach. It's just a matter of where it is and when it's there. So at this particular point, we are quite happy to finish up our turn. We're quite happy to pass it around and just let that sit, and then go full gold next time. Now, if we do need to, we do have the Rewind, which we can slap someone silly with, but we don't need to necessarily hold that because we do have the Cyclonic Rift. We could also Brutal Expulsion if there is a particularly nasty problem. We're just going to really hold that up and just let people do what they want to do for the interim. In the meantime, let us get ourselves untapped. So we have a fair pile of mana here since we are up to 10 lands and a Soul Ring. we've essentially got 12 mana on board. We're pretty hungry with that. We're pretty happy. It's not an issue for us. Alright, so we will start our turn. We will see a mountain, a mystical shooter, and we will of course see a Eternal Witness. We've got plenty of options here. Eternal Witness is a bit weak right now on the grounds that there is nothing in our graveyard. Obviously with the Riku we can potentially get multiple things back. It's pretty handy. Similar to the mystical shooter, it's not going to do a huge amount for us right now, because we don't really have much in the way of draw power, and the mountain of course is absolutely dead. But in this particular case we are going to take the mystical shooter because that is a useful thing to find next turn. We will pop the Eternal Witness and the mountain back on top. We are going to slip the Alchemist Refuge out because, hey, it is a tasty little thing to hold up. We can of course then flash randomly quick Ullamogs into play and people will just not know what's about to hit them if we don't do it that way. Given this, we do know that we have access to, as I said, 12 mana before, so it's 4, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. Ulamog is 11, so given that it's one hit for the helm, it's functionally 10. We need 3 mana to activate the refuge, 2 and the refuge itself. So if we have these 3 lands here, the Flooded Grove, the island and the refuge, the 8 land here and the Soul Ring gives us access to a instant speed Ulamog. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition. So at this point we're going to essentially hold that up, where we'll sit back and just let our opponents try some shenanigans. If they really do, we can just rift them, and we're quite happy to Cyclonic Rift and just sweep them out as well. It's not really a problem for us. We're in a controlling stage, but if we don't need to control, we can get quite aggressive with this deck. So let us assume that we do need to control at this particular point here. We can rewind as a free spell, that's quite nice. We can of course then go for the Rift, which is 7 mana. If we're going to do it, then we'll essentially Rift and play an instant speed Darksteel Ingot to reset the board, which will take us to our next turn. In our upkeep we can of course go for a Mystical Tutor, which we can actually do at the end of their turn because of the Darksteel Ingot. So we essentially can tutor at the end of their turn to fish up whatever we'd like to be as our next turn, which is most likely going to be something nice and big, preferably, for example, a Epic Experiment at this particular point, or we have a wheel. We can essentially go for whatever we think is going to be tasty enough to put a really big hole on the board. For me, that's probably going to be an Epic Experiment. I do really like the smell of that at this time of the morning. Who does not like an Epic Experiment? Alright, so we are shuffled up. We will start our next turn. Now, that means we'll see the Epic Experiment. We'll see land. We'll see land. In this case, the lands are functionally quite dead. We don't need them. We don't want them. However, we don't want them clogging up our Epic Experiment either. If you have the life, it's quite safe to use the the Sylvan Library to just keep the lands. If you're low, sometimes you may just need to take up the Tarn and shuffle and keep the Epic Experiment. That's also a viable play as well. In this case, we are assuming that we are in the mid-20s, so keeping them is not so much of an issue. It does put us down to about 10. It is risky, but you have reset the board, so people are essentially at a point where it is difficult for them to do anything. We do just want to keep those lands out of the way. From here, we do have access to, as we said before, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 mana. So we can go quite deep. We do want to potentially hold counter magic up. So we don't want to go balls to the wall per se, but we do have the Guruk, so we can essentially dig quite deeply on that. So with this one, what we will do is we will float the 14 mana, which is everything we actually have. We'll also play the Cinder Glade, 15 mana. We'll use Guruk to untap 2 lands, which will be these 2. Otherwise everything will be nicely tapped up there for us. And we'll Epic Experiment for 13, which is huge. 14, 15, because we have the Epic Experiment and we have Awakening and Jace's Sanctum. Now that will also allow us to scry first, because unlike Mind's Desire, it doesn't care about the shuffle. So we see a Sylvan scrying. In this particular case, we can either chuck it at the bottom or we can go for it. We might as well stick that one fairly deep because we don't really need a Sylvan scrying. It does potentially add to the storm count though, so that's one thing you need to consider is, do you really care about the storm count there or not? Sylvan scrying, it does actually count for storm. So we might actually keep it for that particular reason. So let's dig out 15 cards and see what we get off that Epic Experiment. So we know the Sylvan Scrying's there. We have a Forbid, Steam Vents, Stormseeker, Island, Cryptic Command, Reverberate, Regrowth, Forest, 4, 5, 9, 10, Eternal Witness, Mindbreak Trap, Mountain, Gruel Turf, and Consecrated Sphinx. Not a great Epic Experiment, as we can see. Out of these sort of scenarios, we really want to actually get a bit more value out of this, but unfortunately it is what it is. So let us have a look and see what we actually have access to. Alright. Not going to use, can't use, can't use, can't use. It's best just to sort it out and just see what you've really got at the end of the day. This hits the graveyard, of course, which does leave us with a grand total of 9 spells we can actually cast. So this has got some good value. Sorry, crypt, that's not available. 8 spells we can actually use. That's about a 50% hit. That's not bad at all. Unfortunately, 3 of them are counter spells. The Forbid, the Mindbreak Trap, and the Cryptic Command, as is the Spelljack and the Reverberate. So a bit of an awkward spot of bother there. What we can do, we can sequence this in the order of Sylvan Scrying. We can stick a Stormseeker on the stack. We can stick the decisions. Forbid on the stack, targeting the Sylvan Scrying. The Mindbreak Trap, targeting the Sylvan Scrying. We can stick the... No, we'll stick the Mindbreak Traps targeting the Forbid. That seems like a very good option there. We can, obviously there's probably different options and preferences, but there's plenty of options you can take. We can stick the Spelljack targeting the... we can stick the Cryptic Command targeting the Sylvan Scrying. We can stick the Spelljack targeting the Cryptic Command, the Reverberate targeting the Spelljack, and the Regrowth. Bit of an interesting way to stack it up, but it does work. So Regrowth will allow us to fetch something. In this particular case of our graveyard, we've got a few options. We could go for the Epic Experiment again, we could go for something else, we can go for the Consecrated Sphinx. We've got plenty of flavourful options. The Epic Experiment is obviously a tasty thing we can do next turn. In this particular case, I'm quite happy to go fish up the Consecrated Sphinx. It's a solid choice. So Regrowth runs out. Reverberate targets Spelljack, which will get us access to one of the counters. Now, this is where you really need to track your stack. to my memory, we had the Forbid and the Mind Break targeting the Sylvan Scrying, and the Cryptic targeting the Sylvan Scrying. So that Sylvan Scrying is not going to resolve, that's fine, but we had the Spelljack targeting the Cryptic and the Forbid here. So the Reverberate and the Spelljack are going to resolve, countering the Cryptic and the Forbid. But they're going to put those into a special exile zone where we can cast those whenever we like, which is a really handy thing. We've got free counter spells just whenever we like. Forbid resolves, Stormseek hits someone in the face, Sylvan Scrying is countered. So we've just basically done a bit of damage to ourselves there, but it is what it is. We've got plenty of options, and we've got functionally 3 counter spells ready to rumble whenever we like. This particular point, we can of course go to our next turn, knowing the fact that we've got these counters, or I should say these 2 counters ready to go whenever we like. We can hold them off, we can essentially sit behind them. Not too worried about that. People are probably freaking out a little bit at this point. We do obviously still have the Brutal Expulsion, which we can use quite handily there as well. So, assuming that sometime in this next turn we do need to use those 2 counters, we will. We will, of course, scry. We'll see a Blatant Thievery, which is nice. We'll hold on to that. We'll draw that off the Cryptic Command eventually. And we'll go to our next turn. So, freeing up our huge piles of mana at this point. Pardon me. And we will have a look and see what we have under the Sylvan Library. Again, we have plenty of gas. We really want to hold on that Mana Drain. The Mana Drain is the most valuable thing we have here right now. The Forest and the Search Tomorrow, functionally worthless to us. What we do want to do is we do want to get some lands out and down, because we are on 7 cards in hand. We do want to make sure that we are able to do things and cast things. So, checking the amount of mana we have at the moment: 3, 6, 9, 12, and we have 15 available. Obviously, if we want to go instant speed, we really are down to a grand total of 12, but that's not so much of a worry here. We just want to make sure that we can really just put mana into play. That's what we really want to do here. We've got 7 cards, bounce the land, we're okay. We wanted to get that Consecrated Sphinx going, but we want to do it preferably at instant speed if we possibly can. With the amount of mana we've got here, that would be 9. We've got counter backup for another, that'd be 5, 8, counter backup for another 4 mana. We have 12 mana, that's not an issue for us. So we can functionally just trade a land around. We'll probably just trade a forest to put Nether Boilerworks into play. When it comes down to the end of that turn, we will obviously tap ourselves up, get ourselves all tapped down, do that instant speed Consecrated Sphinx, and back it up with Drain Mana. And a Brutal Expulsion if we absolutely have to, because we want to get that Consecrated Sphinx into play. Now, you might say, why don't I do this during my turn to force them to load up? Look, that is certainly an option. In this particular case, we want to actually hold the counter mana up, just in case we need to. If we burn those counters out, we can do that earlier. So just getting that Sphinx into play is really where we want it to be. We want to hold that with counter protection, and that's going to help us reload. We've got some big threats here. So while they're trying to deal with that, we can essentially start hitting it with Thievery, we can hit it with Yulimob, we can hit it where it hurts. At this particular point, we've functionally got game on our opponents. We can, of course, keep digging, we can keep going. It doesn't really matter. But assuming we are going to keep going here, let us make that assumption. We'll go into our turn. We'll draw those 3 cards. We're going to see we have, again, the Search, the Forest, the Time Spiral. We don't want the Forest and the Search. They're going to go back on top. We're going to take the Time Spiral. We're going to replay our land. We are functionally up to something like 17 mana now. We have more mana than we know what to do with. If we hit anything, we are pretty much going for gold. Now, with that Sphinx in play, because we have this time spiral, that essentially is going to be able to allow us to draw our entire deck to functionally hit as many wheels as we like. If we didn't have the Sphinx in play, assuming we didn't, so let's get that offline for now. Assuming we didn't have that Sphinx in play, we can go for 3 4 mana there, because the Helm Awakening Jace's Sanctum make it so much cheaper. We can play that time spiral, we can get this going, we can shuffle our hands up quite nicely. And then we'll also shuffle our graveyards in, which we can see that's a big chunk of cards. It's about a third of our deck, and we are reloading at this particular point. So we have just assumed we don't have the Consecrated Sphinx in play, for the simple reason of if we do, we just know that's game. So when you can draw functionally 50, 60 cards, what's your opponent going to do about that? Very, very little, apart from hit you in the face with Molten Psyche. We, however, want to counter our opponent's draws, so we've just forced them to draw 7 cards. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, not a great hand. As we can see before, we do have options. We can go again. But as you can see, this is the sort of shenanigans this deck will pull. It gives you options. You had the Sphinx before, you had the Ulamog. There is literally the ability to just keep going. We've seen this deck wheel and wheel and wheel again, but this is functionally how this deck does actually play. The end game will be that you will hit enough wheels, you will hit a high enough draw count that you will actually get to the point where you can smack someone in the face with a very lethal Cryptic Command, not Cryptic very, very lethal. Where is it hiding? Sorry about this, boys and girls. I've been talking for a while now. Cerebral Vortex, or Molten Psyche. It is the common win condition. Apparently the deck is not going to do it today, but you're basically seeing that there is definitely options, and this deck plays quite efficiently. It will deal with what is potentially thrown at it. The deck just is, as you can see, super hungry for mana, and it will use it, it will abuse it, and it will go. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope the Mulligan discussion earlier was great, and say if you like watching these videos, please let us know. We will try to do more of them, and I'll try to have better hardware.